5, bus build fails. Yes, fails. Now, my opinion, so like any opinion, it's my own. And if you don't share it, well, good for you. Number 1, mechanical inspection. Make sure that you've got a sound home to build your bus on. You don't want a bus that you've built, it's beautiful, it's your home, and then you can't drive it. Or it's unsafe to drive for that matter. So make sure you get a mechanical inspection before you go anywhere with your bus and before you turn the first wrench. 2, parking the bus. Now, we have to park the bus to work on it, obviously. But every week or so, maximum 2, take the bus for a drive. Yes, and by taking it for a drive, you don't have to go across the country, just till everything warms up. That keeps the brakes active, it keeps the suspension active, keeps the engine happy, the transmission, everything. And as an added bonus, as you're building, well, we do things to the bus, right? Did what you do in the last 2 weeks create a rattle? And if it did create a rattle, well, what are you going to do to solve that rattle? Well, if you build the whole bus without moving it, and then you discover a rattle, how far down is that rattle? We don't know. So be careful and make sure that you drive the bus every week or so. Number 3, dimensional lumber. Lumber has no place in a bus conversion. No. 1x2s, 2x2s, 2x3s, 2x4s, 2x6s. You don't need those in your build. First of all, the bus can support itself just fine. It doesn't need additional walls to support it. Secondly, that dimensional lumber takes up space, valuable space. Imagine if you have 3 walls in your bus, 3.5 inches each, that's 10.5 inches of length of your bus that you've lost, never to get back again. Now, in most high-end conversions, I'm talking the $1 million ones, they use plywood. Yes, you can make a wall out of plywood that's solid, safe, and does everything you need. Now you're gonna say, well, I put my plumbing, my electrical through the walls. Yes, you do, but you don't need every wall to be 4.5 inches thick. You just need one, and you don't need it to be that thick. In fact, the wall right behind me there, it has plumbing going through it. But the whole wall, the whole enchilada, is only 1 3/4 inches thick. That's because we have 3/4 plywood as the quote-unquote framing, and then 1/2 inch plywood on either side. So we don't need extremely thick walls. The other thing that dimensional lumber does against you is it moves. Get it humid, get it dry, you'll see. A 2x4 does all sorts of weird things. It twists, it moves. Again, causing more rattles, more failure points, and all sorts of things you don't want in your bus. And the last thing about dimensional lumber that's not good is that expansion and contraction that it goes through. Well, it does all sorts of neat things like breaking screws, or even worse, making them loose. That's not a good thing. In the end, your bus is gonna fall apart, or it's gonna sound like it's falling apart as you drive down the road. Number 4, exaggerated roof raises. Now, mind you, little roof raise, 6-10 inches, okay, if you need it, great. But nobody needs a 2-foot roof raise. You don't need an 8-foot ceiling in your bus. When you do that, you're damaging your bus, first of all. Secondly, your insurance company is probably not going to be friendly to the idea of you raising your roof. Third thing is, that's a lot more space to heat or cool. Yes, you're going to be in 70-degree weather all the time and 50 at night when you go to sleep. We all think that. It's not true. Doesn't quite happen that way. There are days when we're in freezing temperatures, and there are days when it's 120. The more volume you have to heat and cool, the harder it is on the systems in your bus. The other thing that the exaggerated roof raise does is tax your engine, like really bad. If you're driving a school bus, already they're slightly underpowered. Now you're taking a bus that, let's say, had an 8-foot by 8-foot cross section at the front. Well, now you've got an 8-foot by 10-foot cross section because you raised the roof 2 feet. And yes, you have that nice transition, doesn't matter. It's still punching a much bigger hole in the air. and that bigger hole that it's punching through the air, well, guess what? The engine feels like it's climbing a hill all the time. It's not having a good day because you raised the roof. Not to mention the handling. When you go around a corner, you're raising the center of gravity. Again, safety. Number 5, and actually probably one of the most important ones, is insulation. You'd never have enough insulation. You never have too much insulation. The more you have, the better. But, very careful here. There are some types of insulation that actually don't help. They promote condensation. They do all sorts of things to your bus that you don't want. They settle, etc., etc. So, study what type of insulation you're putting in your bus. And finally, with insulation, there's one term you need to be familiar with, you need to know, you need to understand, and you need to eliminate at all costs. And that is thermal bridging. Thermal bridging will be your downfall. You can have a very comfortable bus. It can be well insulated. Then you have that bolt that you secured something with that's into the frame of the bus. And now that bolt is causing you all sorts of havoc. If you're in a cool climate, or cold climate, that bolt is going to sweat in the winter. Not a good thing. In the summer, it's going to transfer heat into your bus. Again, not a good thing. So understand what thermal bridging is, know what thermal bridging is, and more importantly, eliminate thermal bridging. Now, these are just 5 things that I see that some people do that don't align with what I do. If you have others, please leave them in the comments below and we'll share those in a future video. Now, back to the drive.